Good evening. My name is Joan Lynn, and I'm the Director of Curriculum for the Millis Public Schools. And I'd like to welcome you tonight to our
Public Schools.
middle schools.
And I'd like to welcome you tonight to our public schools.
I apologize for that. I'd like to welcome you tonight. I'd like to welcome you tonight to our middle school principal interviews. Our first candidate, our first finalist is Mr. Christopher Glynn, and he comes to us as the sitting vice principal of the Kennedy Middle School in Natick. Good evening. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
I apologize for the problem with our voiceovers there. Tonight, our focus is for people who are watching on YouTube to get to know you a little bit better tonight. So I have some questions that we will ask, but I'd like to start off by offering you the opportunity for a minute or so to tell the people who are watching from home and who haven't had the opportunity to meet with you yet a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. This is the year of the Zoom, so I hope there's a lot of folks out there. And it wouldn't be a Zoom without a technical difficulty, right? My name is Chris Glynn. I am a Massachusetts native, a 16-year educator, high school trained social studies teacher turned middle school administrator. And I've mostly worked in the Somerville public schools until this most recent school year, and where I became the vice principal of the Kennedy Middle School in Natick, where I live. My journey's been a really fun one. I look forward to talking about all the things I've learned along the way, and hope to convince you why I think I could and should be the next principal of Millis Middle School. So looking forward to the questions.
Well, thank you. So the first question, what do you see as the parent role in middle school education? And how do you support parents in helping their child succeed in school?
It's a great question. It's a vital role. It's a triangle. There's students, teachers, and family, and each leg of the triangle is of equal importance. So parents should be a supporter. Parents should be great, coaches at home, even though it's our job at the school to sort of deliver the instruction. Partnership is the word I think of most, though, when I think of the role of the parent. When I see a successful school parent or family relationship, I see parents in classrooms being the judges in a contest where the students are creating a project and they're promoting it via a Shark Tank simulation. Parents who are judges in a poetry slam in an English classroom. That's the good stuff, and that's sort of evidence to me of when we know we've got a positive sort of situation with our parent community, and that's something that I had at the Healy School with my parents. So how do you support that? I think active communication through a variety of means, availability to families and parents at different hours of the day, because not everybody works the same schedule and has the same time available. So how do we support it? Availability. So I believe in weekly communications. If social media is your thing, fairly active social media presence educationally. So that sort of thing. So I think it's all about communication and keeping everyone sort of in an open door setting. So those are some of the things I think I see as evidence of what a great parent relationship is with the school.
How would you describe your style as a principal? What's your philosophy of education?
So yeah, that's a great question too. For me as an educator, it was all about preparing our students to be decision makers in a 21st century world. Not only having the academic skills to make informed choices, because the choices students make, define their lives and what they value, but what they morally stand for. So as a social studies teacher, for me, it was all about figuring out what we believe in and then how to live those values and build that into sort of an educational landscape. So creating projects and opportunities for students to explore who they are and what they value, so that then they're prepared to make the decisions, big and small, in their own lives, or if they become a school principal or a member of Congress or whatever it might be. The decisions students make really shape their community, their lives themselves. So we need to prepare them to do that. I know that's very much like a social studies mindset, but that was always what drove me as an educator. So I hope that answers some of that question.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Due to the small size of our school and our district, what do you see as challenges that come with that? And how would you address that?
Yeah, that is one of the virtues, I think, of Millis. One of the things that's most attractive is the small community and the idea that everyone knows one another. A pitfall of that can be difficult to reinvent yourself for a young person. If you're with the same group of kids for the same 12-year span. So we have to create lots and lots of opportunities for every student to find their place to shine, find their place to be celebrated. A pitfall of a small school can also be, we may not have as much to offer in terms of extracurriculars or elective courses or in the specialist department or that sort of thing. But what we can offer, we can go deep on and do really well. And so, for example, even though Spanish, I think, is the only language offered, for example, at Millis Middle School, there's a full immersion program that I've become aware of that is a pride of the community. So if we're going to do it, we can do it quite well. But we'll not be able to change the numbers of kids that we have. But I think we can make a showing as to, that's okay. We can do what we do and do it quite well. So there are pitfalls, but I think the great virtues of that is that I feel like it would be difficult for a child to be invisible in Millis Middle School. And that can be, particularly in the middle school age, a really challenging time for kids, and to feel invisible when they're a young adolescent in a larger school is a terrible thing. And I just see that as being really hard to accomplish. And having just walked the halls briefly at Millis the other day, a difficult thing to accomplish in a small school. So I see it as a value. There are, things that come along with that, but yeah.
Often as a school administrator, you're removed. You don't see the students as often, obviously, as their classroom teachers who see them every day. So how would you engage as a principal with the middle school students?
Oh, well, if you ask my current kids, they would tell you, well, he comes to our Friday community meeting every Friday and sings karaoke with us. If you asked a sixth grade group, they might tell you, well, he comes and plays the drums with us in band because he's a drummer. He is not afraid to laugh at himself. I can always come to his office because he gave me a tour. He showed me where to come if he needs me, if I need him. I love teaching. I still miss it greatly. So any opportunity I have to work with the educators on improving their practice, I love to take and say, let's do this side by side together, both to kind of show my own vulnerability and willingness to learn together, but also to be with the kids and to show them that I'm not just the guy who makes the announcements in the morning and then goes to have a donut. A student once gave me a cartoon that showed me that said that, but that I'm a teacher too, that I'm an educator too. So I believe in visibility. I try to have lunch when we didn't do lunch at the school this year, but I would eat lunch with the kids every day, different group every day, be on the recess field with them every day, playing the games with them. So, if you build those relationships, that's what this business is all about. It's about connecting with adults and kids and families. And the more they see you, the more they trust you, the more fun they have with you, the more willing they are going to be to listen to you, do the learning, get in line if they need to, that sort of thing. So, I'm if you ask my current teachers, I think they'd probably tell you I'm pretty visible and pretty available to my kids, because that's what it's all about. It's the whole reason the school is there, not for me to have a job. It's for those kids to learn and thrive.
So part two of that same question, and I think it's a little different than the first question I asked you about the role of parents in their students' middle school education. Mm-hmm. This question is, how would you engage the parents? And we certainly have had challenges this year with COVID and restrictions and not having people in the building. So how would you do it if it was post-COVID?
Post-COVID in a normal world?
Yes.
I hope we get there. I would host coffee mornings, luncheons, different hours of the day. I would have a sort of standing parent availability time. I'd move my desk into the lobby. The lobby of the Healy School became kind of a community center. I mean, it was a place that I was proud of, that became so welcoming, because we struggled with getting, families from all of our different demographic groups and sort of, the variety of the community that we had. And we really made an effort to try to create that lobby space, to demystify, to just get the doors open and get people in the building. And food has always been a great way to do that. Opportunities for parents to share, the things that they do well with students, whether we're talking about career fairs and kids learning about, professions or things they might be interested in, or, whether we're just talking about parents getting involved on field trips or being a room parent or any of those sorts of things. So it's about communication. If I get an email at 9:00 at night, I'm probably going to answer you because I don't like things to sit overnight, and I want you to get an answer. So, I'm sort of responsive to a fault. I don't answer the phone or answer emails at my dinner table with my kids. I'm trying to model that, but I believe in, availability. And, if we create that open door feeling, like I know the teachers talk about instructionally, Millis Middle School is a very open door educational atmosphere. We need to do that in terms of, like, are we a community building as well? So I would rely on some of the institutional memory of some of the folks, and like, what have we tried in the past to get folks in? What are some of the new ideas that you think could be tried as well? Because I know Millis is it's a community that's been together for a while, and there's not a lot of turnover with those teachers, and people love to stay for a while. So I'd be all ears for that too.
So middle students sometimes, make a bad choice or, do something that maybe goes against some of our rules or our norms in school. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to supporting students and maybe what discipline might actually look like in school?
Absolutely. So I like how you put it. It's a poor choice, and it's not a defining moment of who this child is. It's typically a mistake, and it won't be the first time a middle schooler made an error, and it won't be the last. And so one never can take it personally. So you always have to look at what's the underlying function of the behavior or the cause. You have to be open to understanding, well, why did this decision happen the way it did? But ultimately, my job, or the job of us leaders, is to help kids learn from that mistake. It doesn't happen without first ownership of it, accepting, and understanding why it was it deviated from the values of our community, and it seems like there's certainly is like a defined set of values and behaviors and expectations at Millis Middle School. So we kind of have a social contract, and most well-running schools do. And so when one breaks from that, it's their responsibility to repair it. In the last few weeks, when we've been back to a fully populated school, the behaviors have kind of popped up a little bit more. There's been a lot more students in the building, and there've been not as many adults by ratio. And we've seen a few things pop up here and there. And, for example, some students made a mess in a bathroom. We were able to figure it out, talk about why that was a serious problem. But I did that by introducing them to the custodian who had to clean up the mess. And they talked, and they realized, wow, this is a person who's part of our community too. And everything that I do has an impact on another person here. And so I offered them the chance to talk about what they thought was the best way to recompense for the choice. And they said, well, I think I should help. I'm not going to say the custodian's name. I think I'm going to help her do the recycling for the rest of the week. And that's allowed them to develop a relationship themselves. And I don't think I'm going to be seeing those kids making that mess. So, student ownership, student action to repair something is what I believe in. And I think that, if we develop understanding and, relationships within that process, then, some of those problems hopefully won't repeat. That's the idea anyways. But then again, if they do, you have to approach it freshly every day. Every kid gets a fresh start every day. And That's how I approach things. It's not a personal thing.
Often adults don't see things the same way, and sometimes disagreements or varied opinions come into that. Can you talk a little bit about how you would handle a disagreement or a different view of a situation involving a parent and a teacher?
Sure. I mean, that conflict can happen, whether it's about a disagreement about the fairness of an assessment or how the parent believes the child was treated after some kind of a behavior. When there's those disagreements, I try to find the common ground first. And I think we can all usually agree that we want this child to be successful, right? And for whatever reason, something has happened here that is made it less likely for them to be successful on this test or whatever. And once we can start moving backwards from that big balcony perspective, okay, we want the same thing. Well, if this happens, what would you say I should do? So I think if we find the common ground first, people do ultimately want the best thing, for the student. So I think if we approach it with that lens, I've never had a conflict between a parent and student that we couldn't resolve if we approach it with that lens and sort of a collaborative problem solving way. And so I hope that kind of answers the question. I know it's kind of vague, but that's what the starting point, and that tends to work for me in my experience.
We've had a lot of changes in the last 14, 15 months due to the pandemic. And what do you see as some of the negative effects of the pandemic, us being out of school last spring completely, and then coming back in a remote first, then a hybrid, and then fully in model? And after sort of talking about what you see as the negative effects, how would you plan to address them?
Great question. I mean, the first thing is the social, emotional, mental health stuff. Kids are meant to be among each other and playing together and learning together and being adolescents together and figuring, it's messy, but they need to do it together. And the isolation that's come with that has, it's been quite clear to all of us in education that there's been an uptick in young people having, depression and those sorts of things. So that's the most negative effect. And that's, I think, an underlying issue that it's difficult to learn if you're not in a great emotional place, right? Academics, there's been some backsliding. We this year did a hybrid plan where it was a remote week followed by a live week, followed by a remote week. And we would take 2 steps forward during the live week, and then 5 steps backwards and start again. So we started to sort of overhaul the standards that we're going to, tell the teachers, you're not responsible for everything. Let's identify the most key power standards, what we agreed upon. What are the things that we really, really need these kids to not lose out on? And some of our common assessment data so far this year, I mean, we're almost to the end, has actually shown like not a huge amount of learning loss. Like we were expecting to see everything in the tubes, and it hasn't been. So one of the nice things that came with that was that we had small groups. We had 50% filled classes. So in their live week, the students were getting a lot of individualized attention and personalized instruction. And so I think that is really going to be the tool, because there's going to be one size fits all for coming out of this. I don't think is that we need to be hypersensitive to each individual personal situation. And I think in a small school like Millis Middle School, there's an opportunity. I mean, you can see the grade in front of you. I can look at 90 students and see that's 6th grade here, and we can really break it down to the individual. And then start offering those tier 2 interventions for academics, start thinking about how we can best address that, thinking about how we can facilitate social groups and boys and girls groups at lunch to kind of reintegrate the community in that way. it's going to be a heavy lift, but it's going to take everybody, I think, to do it. So there's definitely been, some major, and for the grownups too. At the end of the day, our teachers have struggled. It's been really challenging for them because it's, everyone became a first-year teacher again this year, and everyone's responsible for, and teachers tend to take on how their students are doing and feeling, and they felt it. And so, it's going to be a community recovery here, I think, together. So when we first welcomed our kids back 2 weeks ago to the full population, where cohort A and cohort B had not spent any time together in the flesh, that we spent a full week saying, hang up the books, let's focus on team building, let's focus on social emotional activities, let's just reintegrate ourselves, let's work on the relationships, let's work on those routines, let's work on confidence building things to make kids feel safe and secure so that they can start learning again in a more typical way. I mean, we'll see what happens with masking and the rows and the distancing, but we have to be ready to adapt. But there's a lot of things, but it's going to be a full, community effort, I think.
So with the sort of the stretches for everybody and the sort of the negatives that went along with it, was there anything positive that you saw come out of it, and any practices that were worth keeping and bringing to Millis?
Yeah, so I don't love Zoom meetings, but they are quite convenient. I mean, the amount of time, parent contact time could happen in an instant. Student contact time could happen in an instant. Kids who are already quite tech savvy and taught our teachers in many ways, and the teachers became, most of our teachers set as their professional goals this year, becoming, stronger remote educators and figuring out ways to make that remote learning experience more meaningful. Having that student able to just drop in on a teacher's office hours and get some face-to-face instruction within a moment's notice for 15 minutes at the end of the school day, where it's not like, well, I need to stay after school, can I arrange the ride and can I do the thing? And it's like, you could email the teacher and say, are you available to meet with me in 5 minutes for 10 minutes? I'm having a hard time with improper fractions. And boom, there it is, it's happening. And the kid gets the intervention and they come in the next day, not stressed about it because they got the help they needed. So having that kind of, that's lemonade that we've been making out of the lemons that we've been given this year. So that's definitely a positive. And the kids just being so unbelievably adaptable. Every week I go to them with another thing that they have to change because a rule has changed. But they've been quite adaptable, and it's been pretty remarkable. So some of the things, mostly about remote learning, I think, are an opportunity to create a little more connectivity. Not in the substitute for learning face-to-face, right? But having that option or that lever to pull that works really well for some kids who may not feel good asking the question in the group, but may feel great asking the teacher 5 minutes one-on-one during an office hours time. So I think that's something I hope to see continue and leverage in a sort of systematic way.
Often, there are existing things that are already in place in a school, whether it's part of the culture or it's part of just the makeup of the school, that have been either fun activities or a rite of passage as you go through a particular grade or a school. And those things are there. And can you talk a little bit about how you might honor what is already there and is in existence, but yet what you might think of bringing to the middle school as your own, sort of to put your mark on the school as the educational leader?
Yeah, so, right. I mean, that's how you build. It's one of the great vehicles for building a great school culture is old traditions, but new traditions too. So you honor what's part of the fabric of the community, the DNA of the school, the thing that were this to be gone would be like, what the heck? Who, what? So you'd never get rid of those things, I would hope. But I've had some success in creating a couple of school-wide traditions that stuck a little bit. In Somerville, we had 4 houses at the high school, an attempt to make communities within a larger school, right? And each kid belonged to one of the 4 houses. My leadership over the student council there, we decided they went out into the school community and they said, well, what new traditions can we come up with? What kind of competitions? We basically made like a Harry Potter house cup like challenge for the 4 houses, and each house was named after a big street in Somerville. So there's Broadway, Elm, Highland, and Beacon. And each house had colors, and we had color wars, and we could offer house cup points to your team for pie eating contests at the pep rally, to great behavior at an auditorium assembly. And it became a way for random teachers to walk up to students, seeing them do great things, and say, heck of a job there, guys. 5 points for Gryffindor, that kind of thing. And it really stuck, and it was a lot of fun. And it kind of became a new tradition. So, I love doing that kind of stuff. That's community building. And when the kids get passionate and competitive, healthy competition, it's a lot of fun. So things like that, I think, are great. That's just an example of something that I've had some experience with. But.
Wonderful. So our last question for tonight is, why do you think you'd be a good fit for this position in Millis?
So I think I've got good experience. I'm new to this. Will be my first principalship, and I hemmed and hawed. Am I ready? Am I ready? If you asked yourself that forever, you'd never make the leap and go for it. It's like saying, am I ready to have kids? Well, no, you're never ready to have kids, but you go for it, you do it. I think I've got a lot of great instructional knowledge and experience across a wide range of ages, in a lot of different demographic areas. I think I'm a lot of fun. I think I'm a great colleague. The biggest testimonial, I could say is my kids really love me. My staff, I think, I've been getting, I told them I'm a finalist, and they said, oh, that's so great. Good for you. I hope you don't get it. And I take that as such a compliment that I've, in the short time I've been in Natick, that I've been able to build up a lot of relationships, because that, like I said before, that's what this is all about. You're never going to be successful if you can't be a relationship builder and a great communicator, and sometimes a difficult decision maker. And I think I do those things pretty well. And I think I could bring that to Millis, and I think I could be a really positive and honor what we do well there, but be transformative in the ways that we can and should be. Because like all teachers, like all students, we're constantly striving to be better and improve and think about it from new lenses. So that's kind of what I bring to the table. I hope you pick me, because I think we'll get along great, and I think your kids will be well served. And I'd love the opportunity. So it's been great going through this process and getting to know you and the leadership team and the staff the other day. So that's what I think I bring to the table.
Well, thank you. And thank you for spending some time with us tonight. And I know we have some viewers on YouTube who are watching right now. So thank you to letting them get to know you a little bit better as well.
It was my honor, and thanks very much no matter what happens. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. And now we're going to welcome in our second candidate. If Zoom works fine, we will have our second finalist in. Hi, Nicolette.
Hi, how are you?
Well, how are you? For all of our viewers on YouTube right now, this is Nicolette Fountas, and she is the assistant principal for the Channery Middle School in the Belmont Public Schools. So Nicolette, if you wouldn't mind taking a couple of minutes and just letting some folks who are watching on YouTube get to know some of the highlights of who you are and what you're currently doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. For everyone that is watching, thank you so much for taking your time to meet all the candidates. And I'm Nicolette. I am currently an assistant principal at Channery Middle School in Belmont. And I am a passionate educator, and I hope that comes out through the questions you're asking. I have been an educator for 16 years, and I first started with Hartford Public Schools. I then moved and relocated to Massachusetts and started working in Belmont, where I have been ever since. I was a 5th grade teacher, and then I was quickly thrusted into lead teacher responsibilities and encouraged to get my administration license. And when a vacancy opened up at our school, because they added a 3rd assistant principal for encore programming, I applied for it because I know the building, I know the staff, and I know the initiatives. And so I took the opportunity, and I am very happy I did. It's given me a world of experiences that have brought me here to you today. Encore programming is that I am in charge of directly supporting the students and staff when they are in health, technology, engineering, world languages, music, physical education, the library. But I also, it's unique in the sense that because we're a large school, 1,500 students, grades 5 through 8, I support all of the students, that I have a really great pulse on the entire building, the staff and the students, and can advocate for them and what our building needs. And so what has brought me here today is that at the end of last school year, I was asked to step in as an interim principal and support the school when my principal moved over to the central office and needed to focus. There's obviously a lot of work that was being done because of COVID. And so I was doing my job and the job of the building principal. And after that, I'm very, very proud of that work. It was a time when George Floyd passed, and there is a lot of communication and work that was done within the community and the staff and the students that I was the lead on. And also there was a lot of work that was being done to wrap up the year for social and emotional support. And I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish. And then this past year, I've been directly supporting the new principal that we had hired. And from all of that work and feeling as though I'm doing the work of a principal, I decided to start looking for that opportunity, and which is what has led me here to you all today.
Thank you. So we have a series of questions, and so we're going to jump right in with
Okay.
what do you see as the role of parents in their child's middle school education?
They're crucial. The parents are absolutely vital for their students' education. I have extremely close relationships with the parents, and whether it's through phone calls, face-to-face meetings, it's important to be able to have the parents have a pulse on their child's education and to be involved and to know, because of the fact that as a team and a partnership, the educators and the parents together, we are working to support students, not only academic growth, but also their social and emotional development. And so it's really important to have a good partnership. And that's the way we do that, is through communication and newsletters, also opportunities to have them be involved in different ways to engage in their child's education if they want. It's important because of the fact that middle school is such an exciting time where these young middle level learners are shaping their identity, and they are testing boundaries, and they are shaping who they are. And the way to best support them is to have good relationships with their parents. Sorry. Well, let me for a minute. So it's really important that through our relationships with the PTO and individual parents, that we make sure that we incorporate them into their child's education and collaborate. Hold on just 1 minute. I'm gonna put her some.
One of the downsides of Zoom is that occasionally something will happen in the background. So we'll just give her a minute to get back to us.
Thank you.
No, not a problem. Nicolette, can you talk a little bit about how you would describe your style as a principal?
Absolutely. I am a very hands-on and supportive principal. I am the type of person that's very friendly, always in the hall. I'm very hands-on in the sense that when I'm at lunch and a child spills their corn, I'm sweeping it up for them. That way they can get outside to recess. I'm also the type of person pre-COVID that's walking the halls and asking students how they're doing as they're working and sitting in the hallway, because of the fact that you want them to be flexibly grouping and comfortable while they're learning. And so students might be sitting on the floor in the hallway, reading a book or working on math. And I'm walking the hallways and asking, how are you doing? And they'll ask, oh, can you sit and help me, Mrs. Fondis, with my work? And like, I'm not understanding this, or I'm having a challenging time. And I'll sit right beside them and work. I'm the type of person where everything's a teachable moment, but because of my approachability and how I am and how I love being face-to-face with the students, that I just enjoy them and they enjoy me. They enjoy me when we have to have difficult conversations, but they also love coming up to me and telling me how they did in their games. And so that's the type of person I am. I also am with the staff, very collaborative. And so staff can come to me at any point with a problem, and I'm very trustworthy. And also I'm the type of instructional leader that loves to be involved in any which way that I can to be of support to struggles that they may be having, or if they want to try something new and innovative. I love to be engaging and supporting staff in that regard. So I would say that I'm an extremely supportive and hands-on administrator.
So Millis is a small school, our motto, small school, big family. And what do you see as the challenges that could come with that, and how would you address them?
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges that could possibly happen with, I love it, small school, big family, because you absolutely, part of being a family is supporting one another and supporting them in a way of any which way when it's personally, academically, that we're a community that is supportive and helps one another. Uniquely, I think, to Millis being a small school, that the students all travel together, is to make sure that these students, when there's conflicts, potentially that you really focus on the core of a conflict. So that way, in regard that you restore that work, so that way students can adapt and they can grow and they can still see and respect differences. I think one of the best things that I always work with students is that it's okay to agree to disagree. And you don't have to agree with each other's points, but we have to be able to coexist, and that's okay. I think within a small district where you're potentially always with the same groups of kids, a lot of work that I'm really passionate about is restorative justice. And that might be a good fit for that, because of the fact that you want to make sure the work that I do in solving conflicts is coming down to the root of it and restoring that work. And what I mean by restorative justice is when there is an issue and a conflict between two individuals, we sit down, we figure out each other's point of view, and we amend it and we work together to come to an agreement. That way we can move on and we can be collaborative once again.
So in a post-COVID world, when we're sort of maybe back to what was our old norm, how would you talked a little bit about it when you were talking about, seeing kids in the hallway that might be looking for some help, but how would you engage middle school students as their principal?
Oh, absolutely. Engaging them means that I am supporting their teachers first, between students and teachers. I'm engaging them behind the scenes with their educators to always looking at our instructional models and how are we providing equity and access for our students so that all students are engaged and they're learning and they're motivated. So that's one way I'd be engaging with students is through our academics and our programming, so that all students have the equity and access that they deserve and that we are aspiring to. Another way is engaging with them is just how I am as a person, which is being involved in knowing about every child and making sure I build those relationships. For me, relationships is of the utmost importance, because a relationship is what allows me to have students academically invested. Also, relationships are what allow me to have productive conversations when there's a difficult conversation around perhaps behavior or conflicts, and go ahead and resolve those issues. And so that's how I would be engaging them. That is the paramount in my work, is to build relationships. And that's through my visibility at lunch, out in the hallways, visiting games, visiting clubs, so that students can get to know me and I can get to know students, because inevitably that's what will let us allow me to best support students when they need it.
So occasionally students make bad choices, and they might be going against a set norm or a rule of the school. Can you talk a little bit about what's your approach to discipline for the middle school level?
Absolutely. So discipline is an opportunity for a teachable moment. In middle school, and I always tell the students this too, it's okay to make mistakes. And it's important, though, to be honest about them, because we need to learn from them. And so my discipline approach is first to have an honest conversation. And if we can't have an honest conversation, then we need to table it. And I let them sit by themselves and think, because I can kind of tell where it's going, because students know me by now, where I respect honesty. And in order for me to help you, we need to be honest and have that trust and have that respect together. When it comes to discipline, of course, there's many different situations, whether it was a conflict with another student, a conflict with a teacher, something really serious. And I do, in a way, an investigation through a conversation about what happened, what's their perspective, as well as the other individual that's reporting it to me. And having that conversation and really diving into the reason, and then framing what the logical consequences for that allows them to restore their decision that they made. I can give you a concrete experience that just happened today. 2 6th graders decided that they were going to skip, and they skipped class for the first and probably the last time ever. And part of that work was that they decided, instead of going to chorus, they were going to skip and join a WIN block, which is essentially the What I Need block, where it's a study hall in the sense of we need to either work on our movement breaks or an academic time together. They decided to join a WIN block that was in the gymnasium and kind of hide with a group of students and go ahead and play. First of all, during COVID, that's not safe because we're contact tracing. But besides that, regular COVID, as you're saying, Joan, we don't skip. And so we had a conversation separately. I always talk to students separately, never together, to make sure their stories are aligned of what happened, where should they have been, but why am I disappointed and upset? And we talked a lot about safety and what would have happened if there was a fire drill, and what are our responsibilities as students, and how did the teacher feel? And then I had them think about how they were going to make it right, because as middle schoolers, we need to learn from our mistakes. So I had them first sit and think about how they were going to make it right. So they knew they had to apologize to the teacher, and they were going to do that, and they were going to write a letter. But part of that was the next day, which is tomorrow, with their WIN block, where they do get their movement breaks, they're going to be sitting with me in the office, and they're not happy about that. But they need to feel that consequence that restores their behavior. And then, of course, I had conversations with their parents, and I bring their parents into a partnership as well to talk about the conversations I had, the decisions, the consequence, and make sure that we fix our mistakes. And one of the moms and I were joking that this is the first and most likely the last, because there was a lot of tears and they didn't understand how I found them and knew, but that's what happens in a school.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit about, sort of the conflict between students, but what happens when it's maybe a disagreement or a conflict between a teacher and a parent? How would you handle that?
Sure. So that does happen. Sometimes it's about the way the discipline that the teacher was doing. Sometimes it's about grades. And what's important for me is to listen to both sides. I know the teachers that I work with, and I was able to meet some Millis teachers, and they are dedicated educators that want the best for their students, and they want to make sure that they are there for them academically, socially, and emotionally, and have the best intentions. But it's also important to hear the parents' perspective of what happened and what is bothering them, and then make sure that I ask the teacher's perspective as well, so that we can come to an agreement and resolve that relationship as well. And it's important to resolve and amend that relationship because of the fact that, back to one of your earlier questions, that the partnership between parents and educators is so important for the growth and the development of our middle level learners. And so a lot of that work goes into, the conversations that I have, making sure that I have the trust with the parents as well, and build that trust back up depending on what happened. For recently this year, one parent was just really upset about the grade that was given in a Spanish class. And because of the fact that the teacher could tell that they used Google Translator, and so it wasn't accurate, and they didn't want to give them credit. And so I talked with the educator about their point of view. I talked with the parent, and then I had a Google Meet with the parent and the educator so we can all talk. Because what's at the core of it is that we are there for the child. And as parents, I'm going to put my parent lens on. We just want to know that when we send our babies off to school, that the teachers that they're learning from are cared for, and that they care about our children just as much as we do. So if we go into a meeting in that way and we have a conversation and we come to an agreement, and sometimes it means that something needs to be adjusted from the teacher's lens, or sometimes it means the parents now see the teacher's perspective. But building that relationship and having that conversation allows us to be productive, and it's better for the students.
So the last 14 months have certainly been very unique for all of us. And in looking back, what do you see as some of the negative effects of the pandemic, and how would you address them?
Absolutely. So one of the negative effects of the pandemic is mental health. A lot of anxiety, depression with our middle level learners, and that is, it's really gut-wrenching for me as an educator. And so one of the things that I'm restoring and working with is the professional development opportunities that I'm offering my staff and the parents in my community. So we're working with McLean's Hospital, and they've run some professional development for teachers of how trauma training and how to have a conversation with students, the type of language to use with our students and our children. And they had a similar professional development with parents one night as well, where we asked our students questions such as, what's the worst thing that's going to happen when they're upset? And okay, let's make a plan for that and work with them. And it's important that as a team in a community, parents and educators, that we be mindful of that. And this training, I'm very happy that we've done it, and we're continuing to do it because of the fact that we've seen an increase in depression and anxiety. And it's really important that we address that. So that's one negative effect. And I'm proud of the work that I've been able to be a part of, and I'm bringing to our district as well. And then another thing that I know a lot of parents are worried about is academically, how far behind are our students. But I have to say that, one of the things I always tell the parents I work with is that it's not a Belmont or a Millis problem. It's not a Massachusetts problem. It's a global problem. And we're going to get there. And we're going to make sure that we use the data and our benchmark assessments to see our students' progress and to monitor it and identify priority standards and make sure that we make growth where we perhaps lacked. And so this next year will be helpful for that. But it's important that I think as a priority, we prioritize mental health and just in our hearts know that academically we will get there, but it's not just a self-contained issue within our community. It's a global problem, and we'll get there. Everybody will get there.
Were there any positive results from the pandemic that you've experienced, and any practices that are worth keeping and bringing to Millis?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of great things that did come out of it. I think the innovativeness, like we quickly as educators had to adjust and figure out how are we going to teach in a different way. And the way we do allow students to collaborate, the way we use technology, the way we give more immediate feedback, which is so important for middle level learners to be able to monitor their understanding, which helps them, self-regulate, but also monitor their growth in different ways. All of that, I think, has been really exciting because of the fact that as educators right now, we're on the cusp of going back to normal soon, hopefully. And now we can kind of reflect on those practices and what are the best practices that we want to keep. Also, a lot of the different types of meetings that we established in Belmont of that just to kind of get a pulse and to be able to collaborate as educators, to be able to, as a team, to go ahead and talk about students and track students' growth and development. That's really important as well. We made some shifts in our school that we were able to do. And I say we because I'm just one person and I work with a team of people. So I don't want to take, all the responsibility for it because I'm a collaborative individual. But our Encore staff, we were able to schedule in a which way because we adjusted our schedule to get them on team. And that was a tremendous asset because of the fact that now they were working with only, instead of 550 students, they were working with 150 students at a time. And they were able to know their students better academically and emotionally. And they were able to know the work and collaborate with the special educator more. And so they were able to modify and also they were able to go ahead and help advocate for students' needs. And that's important because one of the things that I have seen a lot over the years is that one student in particular might act differently in science than they do math, and then different in art, or the different in Spanish class or French class. And so as a team of educators coming together and sharing our perspectives of a child that you're concerned about, it's important that we work together to go ahead and identify our concerns and our benchmarks and create action steps. And it's really important that that we work together for that. And that was a great thing. I'm really proud of that as well. But so I hope that, coming in, if I were to join the Millis team, kind of learn of what went well there, because I think there's a lot of lessons that we all can learn as educators.
Which is a nice segue to the next question. The next question is about sort of honoring the culture or maybe the traditions that are already going on in the middle school, but at the same time, starting to think about making your own mark as the principal. Can you talk a little bit about something that maybe you would think about bringing, or how you would kind of merge the two, the pre-existing as well as something new you'd like to bring?
I feel like a new administrator should never bring anything right away. I think it's important stepping in that you learn the culture, you learn the climate, you work with the stakeholders. So, working alongside the staff, working alongside the students, working along with the administrative team in Millis and learning about the different initiatives, working alongside the parents and getting a pulse onto what the needs are in the community as well. That's really important because when you have an idea from every single stakeholder of what's going well, what changes would they like, and learning that firsthand and experiencing that firsthand, that's when you can start to brainstorm. But coming in to a district, I don't think it's appropriate for anyone to just start changing anything because you don't know the culture and the climate. And when you walk into a place, there's a lot of great things already existing, and you can't make any changes unless you learn about it and you learn where and you identify where the needs are. So it'd be a lot of the collaboration and a lot of the work. And that goes back to my visibility and how approachable I am, and working alongside the parents and all of the other colleagues in the district and teachers and students to either learn what might other individuals want to see change.
And our last question tonight, Nicolette, is why do you think you'd be a good fit for this position in Millis?
I think that I would be a great fit for Millis because of the fact that I am a passionate, hands-on educator who is devoted to students and their academic, social, emotional growth. I'm also devoted to teachers and supporting them and supporting the way they teach and their innovativeness and being an instructional leader in that capacity. I'm also the type of person that thinks of a big picture. And so not only do I think about the school I'm at, but I also work with other district leaders and think about what my district needs. And so being that type of person that is very collaborative, I think is an asset. I also think that just knowing Millis and the supportive community and knowing the amazing dedicated staff and meeting a handful of students and how wonderful they were, I think I would be fortunate to work alongside everybody there.
Well, Nicolette, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I'm sure that the parents have appreciated, our viewers on YouTube have appreciated getting to know you a little bit better. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much too. I really appreciate the time and the questions.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. So at the moment, we have one more finalist, but he has not signed in yet. So I'm going to stop my video for just a moment and put myself on mute and see if I can give him a quick phone call just to see if he's having trouble connecting. So I will be right back. And we are back, and our third finalist is here, and I'm going to admit him into the room right now. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good evening, John. How are you?
Well, thank you. For our YouTube viewers, this is Tim McLaughlin, and Tim McLaughlin is the elementary principal in West Bridgewater, grades 4 through 6, I believe, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so, Tim, tonight we have some viewers on YouTube watching this interview. And so for their benefit, if you'll take a couple of minutes and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here to Millis for applying for this job.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim McLaughlin. I am, as Joan said, the principal of the Howard Elementary School here in West Bridgewater. I live in East Bridgewater, just a couple miles away, and I live with my beautiful wife, Catherine, who is an elementary reading teacher. I have a 12-year-old son, Aiden, a 10-year-old son, Owen, and a 3-year-old daughter named Neve. I also serve on the East Bridgewater School Committee, where I was honored enough to be the chair both last year and this year. I served, prior to my career in education, I served in the U.S. Army for 6 years, serving overseas in Afghanistan. I have been in education for 17 years, holding a variety of different roles, from teaching at the high school and middle school level to being an administrator in middle school and elementary schools in several different districts on the South Shore. And I'm here before you, as I told the committees today that I met with, is very honestly, I miss middle school. I'm looking to continue my career working with middle school kids. I absolutely love that age range. I love the mixing of the academic needs with the social emotional needs, and having individual grade subject area teachers, that kind of a structure. And it was my first administrative role, was working in a middle school, and I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to that.
Thanks, Tim. So we have a series of questions, and so I'll just start right off with, what do you see as the as a parent role in the education of their middle school students?
It's collaboration with the team. I mean, like I said, I have a 12-year-old at home, so we're coming into those middle school years, and we know that, to be effective parents at home, we have to communicate with the teachers about things that our child is succeeding at and struggling with. Be in tune with what they're doing in class, and be aware of how we can support our child at home. And when there's something that's going on with our child that wouldn't be so readily apparent to the school, make sure that we keep in touch with them, and it helps them be better able to work with our child when they're there, is if they know the full package and the full picture of who our child is. So, we just, it's kind of a two-way revolving door, that we know what's going on there, they know what's going on here, and that we have the child's best interest in mind.
How would you describe yourself as a principal, your style?
Energy, I think, is the word that would come to mind. I think kids and staff need to see the building leader as a positive, energetic, ready to go kind of person. I think it kind of rubs off on the school committee when you're giving the kids high fives in the morning and, giving them the accolades and the small little, go get 'ems in classroom when they're succeeding. And also when you're there to build them up and support them when they're struggling, So I think just kind of having that positive, vibrant energy with kids, being a frequent visitor in the classroom, coming to their sporting events after school, seeing what's going on in both academic and specialist areas, and just you want to be the hamster that's turning the wheel, I guess. So yeah.
Due to the small size of the Millis public schools, what do you see as challenges that come with being a small district, small school, big family, and how would you address that?
Yeah, so West Bridgewater is not very dissimilar from Millis in a lot of ways, and we always say that one of the biggest strengths is that we have such a small, close community. And some of the biggest weaknesses are that we're such a small, close community sometimes, that sometimes kids, for their own reasons, need a little bit of anonymity, need the ability to separate themselves from others in their grade, or kind of have moments to themselves. And it's hard to do that in a small community. Things, everybody knows everybody else's quirkiness, their strengths, their weaknesses. And coming into sixth grade, you've been in 6 straight years now with this same group of 95 kids. And it's really tough to kind of have your own moments sometimes where everybody else knows so much about you. I think the way you go about that is just providing so many different options for kids where they can find areas to be successful. I think a really well-run school district and school will have something for every single kid, an offering for every single kid, in an area for them to excel and an area for them to feel comfortable. So, as long as in that small community, the kids aren't feeling like they're just, in a box and it's a cookie cutter experience for everyone. As long as they have that opportunity to succeed and to find their little niche, I think you can overcome those things I was discussing earlier.
Yeah, my next question, you sort of addressed it a little bit, but maybe you could just expand upon it a little bit more. How would you engage middle school students as their principal?
Sure. So you have to show them that you are in it for them, that you're here for them, for their victories and their defeats, no matter how many of them are or however big they are, the school year is long and it's filled with a lot of both. And I think, again, the kids seeing you as a smiling presence that is there to make them want to come in the building in the morning, to, when they do well on a math test or they're figuring out a really difficult science problem, their principal is there kind of working it out with them. One of my favorite things to do is go in and participate in science labs with the kids and kind of remember just how difficult science was when I was that age. But just, to be, getting your hands dirty in the class with the kids and see that. And then, when you are there for those positive moments, when the difficult moments come about, the kids know that you're there for good or bad, that, you're there to build them up when they had a tough day at home and they may not be thrilled about being at school. If they had a disagreement with a peer or aren't doing so well academically, they can see that you're there for whichever side of the coin is being presented at that moment. It kind of works that way with discipline too. You have to, you're there to hold kids accountable and set certain standards and expectations in the school, but you're also there when kids are showing that they're making good decisions to reward them and commend them and make them feel good about that too. So they know that you're seeing both sides of their possibilities.
Yeah, and that's actually the next question, that students will occasionally make a bad choice and they might, go against a norm for the school or their teacher. Can you talk about your approach to how you handle that?
Yeah. So, I kind of talked about this with the staff earlier today, that I think as an administrator, you have to be able to listen to what is going on with the child when they're in front of you, when something's not going right. There are very few children that come into school with an agenda or idea that they're going to go in and be disruptive or break a norm. And so when that happens, you need to be thoughtful about why that's happening and listen to what's going on in that child's life, what their perception is, and what caused them to make that decision. And certainly hold them to expectations. I mean, I think kids need boundaries and need to know where the limits are and what the rules are, but you have to show that you're willing to listen. And while you may be holding them accountable, that you're going to help build them up as well too. You know, one of my big things I stress with kids is if something goes wrong and they get a consequence, that when that consequence is done, it's over. We're not dragging it along. It's not going to get brought up every day for the next 2 weeks. Something went wrong. There was a consequence for it. You did it. You were reflective, and now today is a new day. And I think you need to emphasize that with staff as well. You know, when you're working with these kids, and you're learning more about who the child is, you need to communicate what you're learning with your teachers as well, because they need to understand why you're taking the approach that you are with that child, and what you know about them, and the information that you have may lend them some help in the classroom as well, maybe understanding better who that child is. So, I think just building the kids up, reinforcing when they make, as you said, break norms, kind of, letting them know what those boundaries are, but then building them back up to make better decisions afterwards is really key.
So often two people can witness the same event and see things very differently from their perspectives. And often, a disagreement or a conflict might happen. And sometimes it happens between a teacher and a parent. How do you handle that?
Try to, and whether it's kids and adults versus adults, or whatever it may be, I think you need to be able to work with both sides to get them to listen to the other side. I see it all the time with, 9-year-old kids will get sent in from recess because something went sideways. And, you'll talk to one child and they'll have a perspective on what happened. And then you talk to another child and they have a completely different perspective. And then sometimes getting them together and having them hear the other one's story and talk about which parts can we agree on and which parts do we dispute and why. It's a mediation of sorts, really, mediations, truly successful mediations, don't need a whole lot of guidance from the person who's running it. It really allows the two sides to talk with each other. So you need to be able to foster that kind of communication between the two sides. And if it's parents and a staff member, you need to be able to sit down with both sides, or video conference with both sides, however you're doing it, and give each side a chance to be heard and state their opinion. Ultimately, there may be still disagreements on the facts, but then both sides walking away knowing they were heard is just of the utmost importance.
So the last 14 months or so have certainly been challenging for everybody. And we've certainly seen those challenges in the schools. What do you see as some of the negative effects of the pandemic, and how would you address them?
A wise person remarked to me recently that they think that when all is said and done with this pandemic, that the academic toll is not going to be nearly as devastating as we thought it was, but that the social emotional toll, I think, is going to be immense. And I think I'm seeing that in my own school, where we made all these plans to come back full time on April 5th, and we had every academic avenue covered and thoughtful about how we're going to support our kids and what services we're going to provide. And I think reflecting back on what we could have done better, there weren't enough conversations about how to work with our kids on interacting with each other again and being part of a school community. And it's been a little bit of a mess. We've seen it with kids coming in and forgetting playground norms and classroom norms, and not having necessarily the stamina to go through a 6-hour day and have rigorous academic activities, and I worry that, we've had our kids back for a couple months now, and then we're going to break for summer vacation where there's no school at all. And then we're going to come back in September. And I think there needs to be some real thought at kind of a reset button that schools are going to hit. What is the social emotional reset button, and what's it going to look like in each school? And how much time do we take walking through them, almost like we're in kindergarten again, and we're just reintroducing routines, habits, expectations, monitoring interactions with each other. And we may need to do that for a while. I think it's as adults, we can easily flip a switch and go back to the way things were. But asking a 9-year-old to do that, or 10-year-old or 11-year-old is perhaps unreasonable, because they don't have enough experience doing it in the first place. So I really think that's, and especially at the middle school level where, social interactions are already, sometimes they go well or don't go so well. I think there's going to need to be a real emphasis on helping our kids navigate being with each other again and being in a school.
Tim, did you find any positive results that came out of the pandemic that you might have experienced in West Bridgewater? And are there practices that are worth keeping and bringing to Millis?
I really admire our kids' perseverance. And I don't think that's a West Bridgewater thing. I think that's just kind of a global thing. I think if you had sat down with me in March and said, all right, here's what the next 14 months are going to look like, I would have wept for our children. And in some ways I did, but I mean, I don't know that I would have expected them to be able to handle the academic expectations that were put in front of them. So I will say that was one of the positives that I was really nervous about how this academic year was going to go for the kids. And I think reflecting on it, it has been as good as we could have hoped given the circumstances. As far as things will carry forward, I'll be interested to see if we carry this digital ability to interact with each other forward in a normal world. We've kind of shown that we can teach and kids can learn in almost any circumstance, that we don't have to be physically in the room with each other in order for education to take place. And I think my teachers, whatever level of proficiency they were at with trying new things before, they have far exceeded that by now. And I hope that mindset of just trying something new, and it may be a new technology and I may be scared with it, but let's give it a shot and see what happens. I really hope that mindset carries forward. I think we've proven that school can happen under the worst of circumstances. And I just hope that educational professionals will keep the positive mindset of being willing to try new things.
When you come into a new situation, a new building, middle school, how do you balance sort of the honoring of the cultures or the traditions that already exist, but yet sort of wanting to put your own mark or stamp on as the new educational leader of the district?
Sure. I think, and I especially feel this way after hearing from the staff today at the school, that I think taking a step back and listening is really key to coming into a new building, because, if you look at all the challenges in front of you, I don't know any of these teachers. They don't know a thing about me. They have their perception on what is working well and not working well in the school. And I, on day one, have no perception of either of those. And so for me to come in and say, well, I think X, Y, Z should be happening is really unfair to the school community, because a lot of the habits and the culture that's been built up there has been built up for a reason over time, And so I think it's really important for me, to come in and meet all of the staff individually and get to know them and their strengths and weaknesses and see the routine of the school year as it goes forward. And, if there's things that I feel like, we could, a fresh set of eyes or a fresh idea could benefit the school, there's a gentle way to start out bringing that up with giving examples of why you think it may be better. You're not going to come in the first year and say, well, I think we need a new schedule, and I think we need to reassign our teachers, and I think we need to do that. That is going to completely disengage you from the staff and from the kids in terms of building a positive school. So coming in and just being a listening ear, and I may take 1,000 notes and then decide when I'm going to bring up those notes or ask those questions, but you have to start out with just being ready to listen and absorb.
And our last question for tonight: why do you think you'd be a good fit for this position in Millis?
I think I like to pride myself as administrator on the personal connection I have with the kids in my school. Something that I love about my current school is that I can walk into any classroom and, first of all, know the name of every kid in the class, but know something specific about them as well. Know something about their siblings, know what sports they like, know their strengths, know their weaknesses. And the kids know that I'm there for them. And I think that connection kind of makes them feel safe and makes them feel encouraged about being in that school environment. And I think, one of the things, I've worked in a couple of schools that were in larger districts, and I was the principal of a school in Falmouth that had 700 kids. And that personal connection, you still want to push it. But at the end of 2 years in the school, you sometimes have to question, there's 700 kids. Did I make a connection with every one of them? It's really difficult. I don't know that I did. I want every kid to walk out of that school knowing that Mr. McLaughlin was there, had their back, and was championing what they needed in order to be successful in that school. And I think a structure like the middle school of Millis, and I think a town the size of Millis lends me to those abilities very well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you taking the time and joining us and giving us, the families and the people who are watching on our YouTube channel, the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better.
And I hope to get to know you all better as the year goes on. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. For those folks that are on YouTube, I believe Mr. Mullaney sent a link today through listserv, and I know he sent one on Monday. And basically, we're also looking for you to offer some feedback. So at the bottom of that email, there should be 3 separate Google forms, and each one of asking for your perception of the candidates by name. So if you wouldn't mind taking an opportunity to give us some feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. Your name does not have to be on it, but we would appreciate your perceptions as to getting to know these candidates a little bit better tonight. And with that, that concludes our night tonight, and I appreciate you being here and joining us tonight. Thanks so much.